Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over the 10-game NBA slate for today on Draftkings. Pretty good slate. We got some good teams going, some good matchups. But before we continue, if you guys could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheet I build every single night, cheat sheet, my Discord chat, defense versus position chart, the advanced statistics I use, everything's color coded. Projections, values, all that good stuff. Links on the description below for my Patreon. And without further ado, we get right into the video. So all the way up top, we have Giannis, who is $900 more expensive than the next expensive guy, but I do think he would be worth spending up for tonight if you have the salary. Comes in at 11.3, which I know is a hefty price tag, but this is actually lower than he's been in a while. The past 4 games, the lowest he was is 11.8. Then 12-4, 11-8, 12, then 10-6 was the last time we had him at a decent price, and that was when it was like a 2-game slate versus Portland, and they priced him all the way down to 10-6. No idea why, but 11.3 is the cheapest we've had him in quite some time, so I definitely think it's a pretty good spot for him, and I've actually been fading him recently because of the blowout risk of the teams he was playing. I typically don't factor in a blowout risk all the time when it comes to just playing guys, because when teams blow people out, a lot of the times the player is more efficient. But with Giannis, I always have concern with him because he doesn't typically always play like huge minutes anyway, so they're more than willing to take him off the court if they are up. And that's been the case versus Detroit. He only had 28 minutes, 51 points. It's not like he had bad games for the minutes he had, but we need more than 20-some minutes out of Giannis to pay off his salary. Versus New York, he had 22 minutes, and they blew them out by about 50. Versus Charlotte, they beat them by about 41, I think. Only had 20 minutes, 45 points, 54 points, 51 points. He was good for the minutes he was getting, but we need those big minutes out of him. Versus Cleveland, he saw 32 minutes, had 60 points. So, point per minute wise, he was excellent, but we need the full complement of minutes for Giannis to pay off, and I do think we can get that tonight. This game sets up really well for him. We have a 232-point total, which is highest on the slate, and it should be a very competitive game. They are only 4-point favorites, and the Clippers are a good team, so I think this is a pretty competitive back-and-forth game, and that suits Giannis very well. And the Clippers are a good defensive team, and I assume he's going to see a good deal of Kawhi or Paul George, and they are 8th versus power forwards. But who really cares about the matchups when it comes to Giannis? He is a mismatch against pretty much anybody. I don't really know anyone that can really guard him, so I don't really care about the matchups for him. And I really just with Giannis, I want a competitive game and a good game environment, and we are going to get that. Milwaukee has a slate high 118-point total, and both teams are top 10 in pace of play, so I do like that. And he's averaging an insane, and I really do mean insane, 1.9 points per minute. That's far and away the best on the slate, and far and away the best out of anybody this year. I know Luka's like up to 1.76, right around there, but Giannis is at 1.9. He's pretty much on a different stratosphere, and the next closest on the slate is 1.58 in Karl-Anthony Towns, so I do think it's a little worth it just to spend $900 more for Giannis when you're getting his insane points per minute rate, and he has a 37% usage. So Giannis, he is my spend up of the slate. Tougher matchup, but I do think we're going to get a competitive game here. It should be pretty fast paced. I think a lot of points are going to be scored. I do think Giannis would be a big part of that. So definitely like Giannis tonight. Definitely spend up for him. Towns, OKC has not been the best versus centers. You could play him, LeBron. But Anthony Davis, I actually like him a lot. He might be my first guy I'm plugging in my lineups tonight, and we'll see if I can fit in Giannis. But I love Anthony Davis here going up against Portland. I think you can fully load him up tonight. I think he absolutely smashes his price tag. Anytime AD is in the 9K range, he is definitely in play for me. Don't worry about the questionable tag. He is going to play. It's just a shoulder thing we see every single day. And I love the matchup here versus Portland. They are 9th in pace of play, so it's definitely a pace-up spot for the Lakers. And they rank 29th versus power forward and 24th versus centers. Anthony Davis should have no problem here. I know the past 3 games have been disappointing in that 40, mid 40-point range, but I think this is the game where I think he eats. He's only 9,600. He should always be in the 10K plus range. When you're in the 9K range and you're Anthony Davis, that's just a little bit too cheap, so I would definitely play him. He's been about 1.46 points per minute this year and a 30.2% usage rate. So AD, probably my top spend up, if you want to consider him and spend up, because he is 9,600. Then Giannis is right below him just because of the salary difference. But I do think Anthony Davis can get you 50 to 60 points tonight versus Portland. I believe last time I looked, it was a close-ish spread, but there's always a blowout chance with the Lakers. But I do think he's a very solid play, so I definitely like Anthony Davis. You can always play Bradley Beal, especially with all the injuries. I mean, he's just been a usage monster, and he's pretty much the only major point scorer on that team, unless you're Bertans, who went absolutely on fire last night in the second quarter. He just could not miss a three. But yeah, Bradley Beal is going to be the main point scorer, so you can always look to him in tournaments. I really don't think he's a cash game play today going up against Miami, but we'll see. We'll see how ownership goes. If he's going to be high owned, I might just plug him in. But Spencer Dinwiddie, he comes in 8,200, and not a lot to say about the guy besides he's just rock solid every single night with no Kyrie Irving or Karis LeVert. I mean, you know what you're going to get out of the guy. If I can just scroll back, I mean, 35, 50, 41, 36, 42, 43, 38, 65, 44, 40. I don't see a dud game in there. I don't think you guys do either. And the guy's seeing 30-plus minutes a game. He's got a usage rate of over 30. His points per minute right now is about 1.3, which is very, very solid. He has high upside. And Charlotte, it's a pretty good matchup. They are middle of the pack when it comes to the guards position. I do prefer the big men versus them, but Spencer Dinwiddie's just been so good, and I think he's a very solid play. I know he's a little priced up at 8,200. If he was in that 7K range, he'd just be a fantastic play like he used to be. 8,200, he makes you think about it a little bit, but I do think he's a safe bet for 40-plus points tonight. So Spencer Dinwiddie definitely on my radar just as this nice, solid mid-range play. And let's see, one of my favorite plays on the slate, though, is Jimmy Butler here at 8,100. And he's been amazing the past two games. He played 41 minutes and 37 minutes in a back-to-back, so the minutes are never a concern at this point. And this is a great matchup versus Washington. Also, should mention he scored 62 points and 55 points. He was only 7,300 in the last game, which is just way too cheap for him. And then they priced him up to 8,100, but I still think that's a fair price. I think he's going to pay off his salary tag. And he gets the matchup versus Washington, which is pretty much the gift that just keeps on giving at this point. All their games are fast, and they really don't involve any defense whatsoever. Now, Miami's a good defensive team, but Washington is just the worst defensive unit in the league right now, giving up the most fantasy points per game. And they're also fourth in pace of play, so a nice pace-up spot for the Miami Heat here. And they are 29th versus shooting guards, and the total isn't out yet, but I don't think it was. Last time I looked, it wasn't. I imagine it's going to be pretty high, though. I think the Miami Heat are going to have a pretty high implied team total, and then the Wizards, they're just so bad defensively, and they're going to have to play catch-up, so should be a pretty high total, I imagine. And he's been good this year, 1.26 points per minute, and a 24% usage rate. So Jimmy Butler, he's pretty close to a core play for me on this slate. If not, he might actually end up being, but definitely like Jimmy Butler here. I think he gets you 45-plus points in this matchup. So definitely like Jimmy Butler. You could also play his teammate Bam out of Bayou at 7,500. It's just more Miami Heat guys versus Washington. I don't mind pretty much any single Miami Heat player tonight. A couple of them, they're kind of just middle of the road plays, but anyone and everyone versus Washington basically. And this is a good matchup for Bam. They are 29th versus centers. Washington is, and he's been getting about 1.12 points per minute. Now, I got to say, this guy's kind of all over the place. I mean, he plays big minutes, but he is all over the place. Last game versus Boston, he played 38 minutes, only 19 fantasy points. 37 minutes versus Toronto, 29 points. Versus Brooklyn, 42 points. Versus Golden State, 24 minutes, but still only 19 fantasy points. Then 45, 46, then 18. Then 50, 32, 51. So the guy's got upside. It's just he's a little hit or miss, but I'd have a hard time seeing him not have a good game versus Washington. So he's definitely someone that should be on your radar as all the Miami Heat players pretty much should be. Jokic is cheap, but I can't play the guy. The guy's just been awful. Sabonis, I like Sabonis. He's always a guy I can pretty much count on for like 35-plus points. It's pretty much what he does every single night. The guy's just a good player. Has a 23% usage rate, 1.21 points per minute, and he's a solid player. And Detroit actually does struggle versus the power forward position. They are a pretty good defensive team, but they're middle of the road versus point guards and pretty middle of the road versus power forwards, and Sabonis would qualify. So you know what you're going to get out of him. You're going to get about 35 minutes per game, probably going to get you 35-plus fantasy points. So Sabonis on my radar is a cash game play, but I do prefer some other guys over him. But if you're stuck at 7,800, I would never hate just to plug in Sabonis and move on. And then another guy who just feels a little cheap here, because I said Bam felt just a little cheap. But, well, first let me talk about Jared Allen, then we'll get to the next guy. But he was a monster last game. I had a lot of interest in him versus Atlanta. I had him as my number one center. 29 minutes, scored 50 fantasy points, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 20 points, 13 rebounds, had a fantastic game. Now, the price is way up, but the guy's really good. He's got monster upside. And like I said, he had a great game last time versus Atlanta, and he gets an elite matchup down low versus Charlotte, who we know is one of the worst teams in the league versus big men. They are 28th versus centers. Now, he's never ever going to be a big 30-plus minute guy. He's gonna get you about 25 to 30 minutes on most nights. But he's very efficient on the court, 1.15 points per minute, and the guy definitely has a major upside. We saw it last time versus Atlanta. Do I think he's going to score 50 points again? No, but it's definitely possible, and I do think he can get you over 40 fantasy points. So Jared Allen is on my GPP radar. This price point takes him out of cash game consideration for me more than likely, because he's usually in that 6K to 5K range. But at this point, GPP only, more than likely, we'll see. But Jared Allen 7,200, I do think he's a pretty solid option. Then Kevin Love, he is very cheap, 6,800. I believe this is the least, his lowest salary price point of the season, because at 7K last time versus Detroit, I said this is his lowest price of the season, so 6,800. He's even cheaper now. Now, last game he did not play a full complement of minutes. He only had 22 minutes, scored 20 fantasy points, so that wasn't too great. But I think he's going to be fine here. He's going up against Orlando, who definitely takes a hit down low without having Vucevic, so not the worst matchup in the world. And if he sees 30 minutes, I think he's going to be solid. He's been averaging 2 points per minute on the year, which is pretty solid. And only 6,800. We know Kevin Love's got upside. He also has downside as well. But I think he's going to be good here. Versus Milwaukee, when he saw 31 minutes, he had 37 fantasy points. And then versus Miami, 46 fantasy points when he played 33 minutes. Then versus Miami, when he played 39 minutes, he had 46 points. So basically, when he's getting 30-plus minutes, he's been pretty solid. Some games, not the case, but versus Orlando without Vucevic, I do think Kevin Love should be on your radar at 6,800. Not my favorite play in the world, but he is very low priced, and the guy does have upside. So Kevin Love on my radar as of right now. But then scrolling down a bit, I don't mind Gallinari versus Minnesota. I think that game could be pretty solid. You could play him versus Minnesota. They don't have the best defensive team in the world. But Chris Paul, he comes in at 6,300. I think he's a solid play on this slate. I have not played him yet this year, but I believe this is the lowest price tag we've seen on him all season. Well, it's actually tied for the lowest we've seen. He was 6,300 versus Philly at 38 minutes, 45 fantasy points. But has he been great this year? No, he's actually been pretty disappointing. He's had sparse upside. I mean, if you look at his last games, 22, 33, 26, 26, 38, 36, 32, 41, 45. Nice little stretch there. 28. He hasn't been great, but I do think this is a matchup where he could flash some upside here, and I think he's got 40-point upside in this game. It's an up-tempo matchup versus the Wolves, as they are second in pace of play, while Oklahoma City is 24. So I do like the pace-up spot here. Minnesota is also 27th versus point guard, so it's a good matchup. And he's been slightly over a point per minute this year, so I think projecting him for about 35 points in this matchup if he sees about 30 minutes is more than fair. So Chris Paul is on my radar. It's a good matchup versus Minnesota. It's a pace-up spot, and he's also very cheap. So Chris Paul, I think he's a solid play. I think he's a safe bet for about 30 fantasy points tonight. And scrolling down a little bit. Oh, you could also play his teammate Gilgeous-Alexander, but I think I prefer Paul. But Rui Hachimura, I think I'm saying that right. Rui, we'll just call him Rui. I've heard his name said. It's a tougher name to pronounce. But this is a terrible matchup versus a good Heat team. I will say that. But these Washington Wizards games always end up high scoring. The Washington just runs up and down the court as fast as they can. The next thing you know, at the end of the game, it's like 140 to 125. And the past 3 games, he's playing like 40 minutes per game. 43 minutes versus Philly, 38 versus Orlando, 38 versus the Clippers. And he's been solid too. 39 points, 28 points, 48 points. Tough matchup, but like I said, it's all about the minutes here. With all the Wizards players who are off the court right now, he's been averaging about a point per minute. And if he's playing 40 minutes, I'll take it at that price tag. I'm not saying he's going to get you 40 points because it's a tougher matchup, so you might have to downgrade that a little bit. But I think he can get you 35 points in this matchup. Might be on the higher end of the spectrum, but I think he's a safe play for 5,700 because the minutes are very secure right now. So Rui is definitely on my radar. The same could also be said for his teammate Mo Wagner, who is 5K. I played him last night. He was very disappointing at 22 fantasy points. On the year, he has a 1.2 points per minute, but the past few games really not been that great. 23, 23, 20, 22. I wouldn't call him a core player or anything, but I think he is in play just because he's going to see an increase in minutes, but definitely not my favorite play because he's been a little disappointing, and the upside really isn't too much there with Miami, and Rui's getting the full minutes out there. So that I think Wagner is like a GPP play only, and just hope he gets hot, because if he only gets about 20 points again, you're going to be pretty disappointed at 5K. Although the price did come down a little bit from last night, so at least he came down 500, which makes him a little bit more viable, but still. Just probably a GPP play only for me. But Nunn here, Kendrick Nunn, I think he's a pretty solid play. Now, he's not flashed too much upside the past for a while, since like really versus Charlotte where he had 31 fantasy points. But I think he's a solid play here, because I'll play just pretty much anybody and everybody versus Washington. I think he sees, should get about 30 minutes in this game, and it's a great matchup versus Washington. They are awful versus point guards. Shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, centers, you name it, they play very fast. I think Nunn could hit value here at 4,800. Would not surprise me if he got 30-plus points. So he's probably another guy you should keep on your radar. And pretty much all these Miami Heat guys could be on your radar tonight. Even Kelly Olynyk, he's not going to see like 30-plus minutes, but you should see like 25-ish minutes, maybe even touches 30. Maybe if the game gets out of hand, he sees some extra run, but I wouldn't surprise me if he got about 25 fantasy points in this matchup. So Kelly Olynyk, again, you can pretty much play just any Miami player versus Washington. I would not have a problem with that. But there's really not a lot of value on the slate. But as of right now, if we just assume that Isaiah Thomas is out, I'm not totally sure if he's going to end up playing or not. I don't even know so I was reading the report. It said that we don't know if he's going to end up playing. They might just set him out for the second set of the back-to-back with the calf strain. So let's just right now assume he doesn't play. Ish Smith is only 3,600, so we could definitely go right back to that well. Everyone played him last night. I believe he was like 88% owned, and he was fine. He had 34 minutes, 33 fantasy points, 19 points, 8 assists, 3,600. I guess, and the price didn't change at all, so we could definitely go right back to Ish Smith. Again, it's a very good defensive team in Miami. But Washington, they just create a lot of fantasy opportunities for both teams, but they're fast-paced, no defense nature. And like I said, he played big minutes last night, and with all the guys off the court right now, he's averaging about 0.9 points per minute, which I will take all day at his price tag. You'll see 30-plus minutes. So Ish Smith, definitely on my radar if Isaiah Thomas is out. If Isaiah Thomas is in, not interested in Ish Smith. So make sure you just monitor that news. And again, news will come out throughout the day, and it'll probably change all my plays. So, but as of right now, these are some of the guys I have interest in. If you want my updated info, links down in the description below for my Patreon, where I'll update my spreadsheet all day. And yeah, my Discord as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Wish you guys the best of luck and have a great Friday. And if you do watch the NFL videos, I will have my core plays video out later in the day. I've been very busy this week. I had 2 presentations I had to do. So then a paper, then it was busy. But I make sure I get these videos out. So see you guys in the next video, and have a great weekend.